If you've ever worked for a tyrannical boss, lived with a megalomaniac housemate, or been trapped in a relationship with a controlling ex, then you've probably asked yourself, were they always like this, or did they become evil? Perhaps instead you've been scared to see how dark you can be on occasion, and worry about what would happen if you had ultimate power. Or maybe you secretly wish to rise to the top no matter the costs. These incidents aren't as uncommon as they sound. In fact, they are frighteningly common. All they need is consent, or coercion, from people just like you. So today, we're going to lay out the steps of this wicked transformation so you can stop it from happening to you or someone else before it's too late.
Very tight control of every aspect of a citizen's life. Attempts to control every aspect of flows of information from the outside world.
It's time to learn how history works as we explain how to become a dictator. Build experience. First things first, you need credentials. Dictators aren't just anybody. You need to have some degree in politics or maybe a few military tours under your belt. Preferably both. Hitler got a taste of warfare in the trenches of World War I. Saddam was recruited to assassinate political leaders as a young man. Even Kim Il-sung was setting up underground Marxist sabotage groups in his 20s. Not only is hands-on experience with weaponry going to help you when it's time to rise up, but learning how to control the masses will ensure you don't fall at the first hurdle. Coming from an aristocracy could help you leapfrog into powerful positions through nepotism, but it will also put you on the waiting list for the guillotine if a revolution springs up. Try to be an underdog who started from nothing. Humans gravitate to that story. You've probably noticed this in your own life. Do you warm to those in authority with no first-hand experience, or do you give props to the guy who came from nothing but still did his homework? You prefer the latter, so if you want to change the world, then hit the books and visit the firing range. Learn patience. The early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese. Be like the crocodile lurking at the watering hole, and learn to bide your time. Brute force can only get you so far. That's why every dictator has as much grit as patience, so train yourself to keep an eye out for the best moments to act. Take Hitler. He knew he could probably bump off President Hindenburg sooner if he wanted, but doing so might jeopardize his crucial final steps to complete his rule. Instead, he resisted that immediate gratification that would have come from seizing power with a coup because he knew it could bite him in the butt later. Instead, he focused on making important, incremental steps when the timing was right. The fire at the Reichstag created enough panic for him to usher through a decree curtailing individual rights and liberties in the name of national security. That made it easier for him to eliminate opponents, which made it easier for him to pass another act that gave the government more power, and so on, and so on, and so on. Now he just needed to wait for Hindenburg to kick the bucket so that he could finally unify his powers as Chancellor and President to become the Führer. To think, the transition from elected official to bona fide dictator took just over a year, and all he had to do was be patient. Don't be afraid to backstab. Let's imagine you're helping your friend reach a higher status in life. Maybe it's getting that managerial promotion or nailing that audition for their big break. Whatever it is, you know that once your friend is on the path to greatness, they will take you along for the ride. After all, you've been through thick and thin together. You're best buds. That's why you're shocked when your friend kicks the ladder away, cuts the rope, or has you dragged down a dark alley by the secret police. As much as a dictator needs to overcome external enemies, it's also the guys on your side that could pull the rug out from under you. So consolidate your growing influence by taking a page out of Stalin's playbook. When a power vacuum opened up in the wake of Lenin's death in 1924, there were two contenders to lead the party, Stalin and Trotsky. But the chair at the helm of the Soviet Union wasn't big enough for the both of them. So Stalin purged anyone who wasn't an ally or even looked like they weren't an ally. The fact that he'd fought alongside Trotsky to overthrow the monarchy meant nothing to him now. That's why you need to keep listening out for rumours and gossip about dissent in your camp, or maybe start them. When it comes to loyalty, you need all or nothing. Make a bold first move. Street cred and a loyal inner circle won't count for anything unless you take action. And the boldest move you could make is a good old-fashioned coup d'etat. Pulling off one requires ruthless cunning, psychological manipulation, and a clandestine ability to cover one's tracks. all skills that a dictator needs to hold onto power. But the real skill is in a bloodless coup, which is why pulling off a bloodless coup within a bloodless coup is a level of Machiavellian brilliance that only Napoleon Bonaparte could do. France was experiencing turbulence during the aftermath of the French Revolution, and the radical new form of government known as the Directory wasn't going smoothly. So when Napoleon returned from his Middle Eastern campaign as a hero, political theorist Joseph Sieyès was convinced that he'd found the general to help him replace the Directory with a consulate. Together, they formed a plan to overthrow the government, which started by spreading news of an impending coup. By stoking fears of an overthrow by the Jacobeans, Napoleon and his cohorts were able to physically separate parts of the government. This made it easier to manipulate them into resignation, or, failing that, force their dissolution. Then, with strategically placed troops around Paris, they gave the signal to storm in and seize power while a new constitution was drawn up. Napoleon had secretly been planning to make himself editor of this new constitution all along. With a stroke of the pen, he demoted Sieyès to the second-in-command position of the country with himself at the top of the pyramid, thus cementing the path that would usher in the Napoleonic Empire, all without killing a single person. Pretty impressive. Become Robin Hood. The Roman poet Juvenal once said, "Two things only the people anxiously desire, bread and circus." What this means is, if you give the people what they want and what they need, they will be putty in your hands. That's why every new regime change splashes out on public projects. After Saddam's coup, which saw politicians escorted to firing squads in full view of television cameras, he splashed out on housing projects, public health services, and other infrastructure developments. Gaddafi did the same, and Hitler's improvements to the economy helped his image. That's because the people will be more likely to forgive you, and thus become loyal to you, if your first act as a leader does something for them. Every time a corporation executes a hostile takeover of a smaller business, they give free pizza and beer to the staff they didn't fire. Pizza and beer are cheaper than a strike, and housing projects are better than a revolt. And they don't have to be big daring gestures either. Lee Kuan Yew is sometimes seen as a benevolent dictator. Admittedly, imprisoning the opposition for 2 years without trial or appeal doesn't seem that benevolent. But let's focus on how his soft dictatorship ruled. His government set up a dating service for single graduates, and there were campaigns for men to have better aim in public toilets. There were also pressures against littering and pornography, and pressures in favour of family traditions that encouraged children to be more courteous. Chewing gum was banned too, which is why the streets were impressively clean. So the next time you have to make a good first impression on your first day as top dog, bring in a box of donuts to sweeten your image. Divide and unite. Nothing brings people closer together like a common enemy. Stoke the fears of your underlings by uniting them against a foe, and don't be afraid to make one up if you have to. Saddam hadn't been in power long when he moved troops over Iran's border, and Kim Il-sung had only just created North Korea when he decided to declare war on his southern neighbours. To be fair, these guys lost both conflicts, although they pretended they won. So take this with a pinch of salt. War is expensive. Consider instead an abstract enemy. That way you can't go to war, and there's no way for the enemy to be defeated. Hitler pinned everything on the Jews, Lenin pinned everything on the bourgeoisie, and communists pinned everything on communists. The real mark of a successful dictator is when citizens will report family members to the secret police for thought crime. Then comes the question of what do you do with enemies of the state? You need to punish them to flex your power, but if you're too public too soon, then the culture of fear could shorten your reign. Getting rid of them secretly works nicely, but so does giving them power. Zimbabwe's Mugabe broke away from the dictatorial tradition of murdering rivals, dissenters, and anyone else he didn't like by giving them power and riches. In effect, he bribed them for their support. If you can't beat them, make them join you. So take note when the colleague who was criticizing the new boss yesterday becomes your team leader the next day. Write a book and rewrite the rules. If you've followed the steps so far, then you've no doubt set up a strong dictatorship. You've got the infrastructure to keep it ticking, the military to reinforce it, and the culture to keep the people complicit. But you'll need a philosophy to ensure you last for another generation. That's why you're going to write a book. Hitler had Mein Kampf, Mao had the Little Red Book, Gaddafi had the Green Book, even Saddam wrote a few adventure romance novels that were released by publishers in Japan and Jordan. But it's better to write something philosophical. Don't fret if you're not the political academic or economist that your earlier credentials suggested you were, because everyone will say it's the best thing ever written. You just need a bestseller as a guidebook for your media institutions to follow. Any dictator worth their salt knows that independent newspapers and news broadcasters are a threat to your regime. So make it easier for state media to spread your propaganda by deciding what is true or not. Goebbels' Ministry of Propaganda proved that Hitler's claim was right. If you're going to tell a lie, tell a big one. And if you tell it often enough, people will begin to believe it. Once you are controlling the narrative, it will become easier to revise the long-standing constitutions and decrees of the land. Re-evaluate laws that might affect how much power you have, and consider using a recent scare as a pretext to rush through legal reforms. A dictator is only as strong as the people who believe in him. So once the ordinary citizen is willing to give you the benefit of the doubt for breaking the rules they themselves could never appeal, you know there's no way your regime could topple, unless you break this next rule. Watch your wealth. Dictators either die from natural causes after a long reign, or it all goes horribly wrong and they bite the dust only a few years into the job. So unless you want to have your corpse defiled and dragged through the streets like Mussolini, there is one thing you need to do to make sure you're not deposed and disposed. Watch your bank account. Parading a luxurious lifestyle will inflame tensions if your population is experiencing economic hardships. Put simply, never say, let them eat cake.
On her head, addressing the question of her subjects being too poor to buy bread with an oblivious, let them eat cake.
King Louis XVI's opulence cost him the monarchy, and Saddam's vanity projects stoked rebel forces. No doubt Gaddafi's shell suits and Gucci sunglasses were not forgotten during the Libyan uprising. But don't think your misspending needs to be on you. Nicolae Ceausescu's communist rule of Romania came to an abrupt end in the 1990s, when a botched oil refinery program caused financial ruin. Austerity got too much and soon the people turned on him. He fled dramatically across the rooftops of the Romanian parliament to a helicopter, but he surrendered when the army threatened to blow the rotorcraft up. Following a prompt trial, he and his wife were executed by firing squad on Christmas Day 1989.
The deposed Romanian leader, President Ceausescu, and his wife have been executed. State television tonight announced a military tribunal found them guilty of genocide and undermining the national economy.
So keep your spending small and secret if you don't want to pay the ultimate price this holiday season. No doubt you've seen some of these rules play out in your own life. We'd love to hear your anecdotes of tyrannical encounters, so share them in the comments below. If you liked this video, then be sure to check out our one on Rudy Giuliani, the other kind of crazy politician to watch out for. And be sure to share this with someone who could be a good ruler or a terrible boss. Remember to subscribe too, because we'll be back very soon with a new video all about how history works.